Hello and welcome to the Pirates Podcast, to be named later, here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. My name is Alex Stumpf. I'm flying solo this week. Eddie Provident was off doing Steelers stuff this week, so it's me riding solo. And as a result, you know, this is a pure podcast. We're not doing the video this week, so thank you so much for tuning in this week. And I did so much trade deadline stuff at the actual deadline and the podcast leading up to it. I kind of want to take a little bit more of a look towards the future with this episode. More specifically, one position in particular. Because I think whenever you look at this Pirates team, you know there are middle infield options. It could be Leo Verpagero. Nick Gonzalez was just sent down. It's a hiccup. You know, it's you know, it is what it is. But you also got Alika Williams. You've also got that O'Neill Cruz fella. He's pretty good. I think so. So O'Neill Cruz is probably got to be somewhere in that mix too. Jared Triolo is someone who's going to be playing more middle infield because Key Brian Hayes is back at third. So there are some options you have in the infield. You also like what you got behind the plate in Andy Rodriguez, and if you still believe in Henry Davis, and if you don't believe in Henry Davis, the catcher, you pretty much are putting him in right field probably in these mock lineups, alongside Jack Sawinski, who has been streaky but arguably overall body of work the best hitter in this lineup, and Brian Reynolds, who not exactly his best year, but he has the track record. So there are some good options throughout the lineup of people who are either established or could be, impact players in the future. First base is kind of the one exception to the rule. And if you've been following the Pirates the last couple years, you know first base has been quite the adventure. It's not been Yoshi Tsutsugo. It's not been Will Craig. It's not been Josh Van Meter. It's not been Colin Moran. It's been a lot of rotating people in those spots. It looks like there's going to be more rotation here to wrap up 2023. The way the plan is right now is Alfonso Rivas, who was acquired at the deadline from the Padres as part of the Rich Hill G-Man Choi trade, and Connor Joe are going to effectively platoon the rest of the way. Connor Joe has the good platoon numbers, but a lot of that is based off of that, white hot April that he had. Since then, he's been kind of middling against left-handed pitching. Not exactly what you want to see. Rivas is someone who has had some flashes in the pan. It's a chance for more runway for him here. I mean, he was absolutely crushing AAA pitching in the Pacific Coast League, and it wasn't just pure power, which is something that I think uh, gets lost whenever you look at the PCL. That is definitely a hitter's league, but it was a lot of walks. It was a lot of just get on base, do the things that you're supposed to do as a hitter. I don't think he's going to be this huge power threat in the major leagues, but I get rolling with him for a little bit. You've also got Malcolm Nunez, who's in Greensboro at the moment for his rehab assignment. He'll get up to Indianapolis. I guess you can't 100% write him off this year, but I think it's more a 2024 thing with him at this point, if he is going to be in the major league plans at all. So, first base is very much wide open. And I talked a lot about Carlos Santana these last couple podcasts about why I didn't feel like the Pirates had to trade him. And then he told traveling reporters, including Dejan Kovacevic, that he would very much welcome a return to the Pirates. Now, if you're the Pirates, it's definitely worth keeping that in mind. He was a great defender. And look, the big selling point for Carlos Santana, in my opinion, is he was a great clubhouse guy. He was a great guy to lead those young players. He had a lot of respect from that group. He did what he was brought in to do. As a ball player, it was a pretty middling OPS. which, I mean, from a cleanup hitter and a first baseman, that's not really what you want. You want a plus hitter there. He didn't really provide that. He was a plus glove. He was one of the best defenders at first base, which is great to have. But I don't know. I do think it's something that the Pirates should keep in mind this winter, whenever you are weighing your first base options. And that's kind of the whole point of this segment is I don't know if there is someone that you could legitimately pencil in as the first baseman of the future for this team. Not to, write off Rivas before he, gets going. I mean, my goodness, he had a great game Friday, a double short of the cycle. That was a he has done great, for his first impression with the Pirates. But here's someone who's also been with three teams in less than a year at a young age. Not always a great sign. Not always a great sign whenever he doesn't have that great a major league track record. He hit in the PCL, okay, good. We see the good traits there. It is also a hitter's league. Again, not to discredit it, but it's something that you got to keep in mind whenever you look at that OPS and that batting average and RBIs and everything there. So I I get why the Pirates took a flyer on him, especially since that whole trade. That kind of just feels like the hey, you want Choi, we'll give you Jimmy and Choi, and you give us someone with a little more team control. That's fine. Uh, I kind of get Michael Chavis vibes, going into that trade though, of like here's a guy who wasn't going to do a whole lot with his current club. Pirates pick him up, worth giving him a shot. It's worth giving him a shot for these next 2 months, but I don't know how much stock you can put on him being the first baseman of the future. The same way I don't know how much you could put in Jared Triolo as someone at that. Like Triolo is a great defensive glove at the hot corner. He can play shortstop. He can play center field. He could probably play a really good first base defensively. Uh, it's also a flat swing. It's also a swing that he hasn't shown a whole lot of power at the major league level. I don't know how much power he is going to show at the major league level. You could say, well, O'Neill Cruz or Henry Davis will go there. Would hate to waste one of those arms at first base, as like the regular option because those are two elite arms metrically, like top 2%, 1% for both of them. You don't want to just stick that at first base. So what do? Well, in my opinion, you spent $35 million this past off season in free agents and players that you required, such as G-Man Choi and Carlos Santana and Rich Hill and Kacha. I think 35 is a good like baseline of you could reasonably expect them to spend that much if they spent it the year before. Spend some of that, give first base a look. Find a way to invest heavily there. Maybe it is Carlos Santana, and he's here to help. Malcolm Nunez be the first baseman of the future or something. But I don't know. I think first base is the position that you got to go by out of this, which is a position that, generally speaking, you could get a veteran who still has a bat, put him in there, and roll with it. I mean, we saw with Yoshi Tsutsuga, with Colin Moran, with Josh Bell. This isn't like catcher, where the Pirates so, perhaps to the point of fault, overly value first base defense. That's not the case right here. So, or catcher defense. They value catcher defense so much. It's not like that at first base. They are willing to experiment there a little bit. So I think that's why this winter you gotta go. You gotta see what's available. Maybe you make a trade. Maybe you trade some of these prospects who, might be a little bit gridlocked, in this system. There's still a handful of outfielders. I look at Indianapolis, like Cal Mitchell and Kanan Smith and Jigba, where it's like, what's their future with this team? We've already seen Travis Swaggerty get released, and yeah, there were health issues that went along with Swaggerty over these past couple years that played into that. it wasn't just performance, but there is definitely not a lot of playing time to be won. First base, I think, is definitely the position that you either A, convert someone over there, and the options you do have aren't exactly great options for first base, or you go buy someone. Number one priority in free agency and trade, in my opinion, this winter needs to be pitching, starting pitching, relief pitching, but position wise, first base is right there too. We're going to take a break. Whenever we come back, all right, we're going to run through those trade deadline deals one last time. Welcome back to the Pirates Podcast, to be named later, here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. Some final thoughts on the trade deadline. And maybe these aren't so definitive with that because I do have a mound visit, which is going to be looking at the pitching that they got back in the trade. But just more the players who are heading out and what they meant to this team. And I've said it a lot with Carlos Santana. I'll also say Rich Hill. Just about every pitcher in that staff has benefited from having Rich Hill around. There were times in spring training, even whenever he was brought in, he immediately bought into this. Hey, I'm the veteran. I'm the guy who's going to be, watching over these young kids. Just talking pitching, just talking. How do you throw your curveball? This is how it works for me. This is what worked for me. It was something that I didn't really expect as he's heading out the door of Pittsburgh and he's reflecting on his time here and he gets a little misty eyed. You can see how much it really matters. And he's talking about how, at 43 years old, he knows you don't know how many opportunities you have, that this could end, pretty much any day. And, that's something that whenever you're in your early 20s, you might not fully appreciate. I think that really did guide how Rich Hill approached this year, how he approached being a leader. And I think he was an effective guy for that. He wants to pitch again next year. He enjoyed his time here. Hey, maybe run it back as a fifth starter. I don't know if you could invest, the $8 million that they did this past year. But if he's willing to take a discount, if he's willing to look at a different role that's more maybe swingman or something, I'm just saying. He was definitely well liked in that clubhouse. G-Man Choi, I mean, this was a short time with him in spring training or just this regular season. Starting in spring training, he comes in a little, injured up because of the offseason surgery. That's why he wasn't able to be in the World Baseball Classic. He comes back and the injury in April, and that really sidelined him for a couple months. And he only played a couple dozen games with the Pirates. Whenever he did, he showed pop. But it is what it is. The Pirates were able to get a little something for him in the trade. Not much more than that. Like, he was a guy who kept things loose. He was fun. He was definitely able to make people smile. He was a popular guy in there. So I think he's one of those guys that you kind of understand why he's so well liked in the league. But the most interesting trade, in my opinion, is something that I get asked a lot in my live cues of why don't the Pirates take a position where they have a lot of depth and trade for pitching? And it's something that's not to reveal the curtain too far back here, but your suspicions are correct. They do have those conversations. A lot of trades happen where you don't know exactly how many times the conversations do happen, but they do have those talks. We saw one of those trades this deadline, the last trade that they made, Rodolfo Castro for Bailey Falter. Basically, two teams that have two players that could be good Major League Baseball players that need a change of scenery. It's as simple as that. Like Rodolfo Castro, we know that there is definitely some, there's a spark in that bat. He's, he, he could be this really dynamic, exciting player at times. We also saw that swing just be out of sync for like a month and a half. And the Pirates tried experimenting. They considered him going right-handed only. They didn't end up, doing it. I wonder what could have happened if they would have just ditched, uh, switch hitting and just went straight into, hey, you're just a right-handed hitter now. Even if it is mainly as a platoon, because you don't have to worry about, the swing that one day. You could really just focus in on what am I doing right-handed. He was in a tough spot. The left-handed swing was just it was bad in spring training. There are things that they were trying to work on, with this foundation, just in general. It wasn't working out. So they made the decision to make him effectively a platoon. And that didn't translate that well into results either. Outside of a couple weeks in like, what was that, late April, early May, Rodolfo really just didn't contribute that much to this team. And he was up here a lot longer than he probably should have been because they didn't have outfield options. I mean, who were they going to, or infield options? Who were they going to go to? Alika Williams wasn't ready yet. Nick Gonzalez got called up, whatever. And Castro is still in the majors. It wasn't until they were able to go to Piguero, who was in Double A for most of the year, that there was finally some shakeup there. So it's I wouldn't be shocked if Castro still has a good major league career, but I think it's one of those you have to do right by the player every once in a while, and if he's not going to click here, then don't waste his time. Plus, there was some middle infield depth. You could use a starting pitcher. Pirates desperately needed some more starting pitching depth, someone who could be optionable next year if it came to it. So very simple damaged goods type trade in both of those regards. A trade that, yeah, it kind of just makes sense. And it also might have that potential to backfire spectacularly for one of the two teams, but that's why every once in a while, figure it out. And I guess I should mention the actual last trade was Austin Hedges for international money. Hedges, I think I said this last week. I think Austin Hedges is the best backup catcher in baseball, and he might be the worst regular everyday starting catcher in baseball. Like all of his value is, in defense, in game prep, in being a good guy in the clubhouse, in being a good guy in those starting pitching meetings. All of that is great. If he does that and catches once or twice a week, you can forgive the batting average and the fact that he just doesn't produce anything offensively. Whenever he's played 5 days a week, it's a completely different conversation, in my opinion. And I think the raw data and the analytics will back me up on that. So we're going to take one more break. We'll be back here in a minute. Welcome back to the Pirates Podcast, to be named later, here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast and Network. Alex Stumpf flying solo here. So Eddie's not here to give me a last topic to win. So I am just going to say this team is 49-60 right now at the time of this recording. My preseason prediction of 72 wins would mean they would have to go 23-30 down the stretch. It's roughly the same win percentage. Now that also comes with that 49-60 was bolstered by 20-8. It's something we've brought up a couple times on this show of what would 70 wins mean for this team. And coming into the year, it's, hey, that's a step forward. And then at the end of April, it's no, that's a disappointment after a 20-8 start. I think with just how young this roster is right now and the options, some things are going to have to go kind of right for them to win 23 games the rest of the way. And enough that goes right that it's like, okay, that's something to build for and build on for 2024. So I think we are nearing the 72 wins is not what they should have been striving for, but it would be a pretty successful season, all things told. It can't be just another. You'd have to still make a more significant leap forward in 2024, but that's a good. Hey, here's the first step. Thank you so much for listening. If you're not a subscriber already, please do wherever you find podcasts or on the YouTube. We're going to be there. We're going to be all around. We travel. We do all that good stuff. You're going to hear from me every week. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again next week.